but I want to make sure that you guys are here because we have a very special opportunity here from Dr. Paul Lieber. If you'll forgive me for a second, I'll read from the introduction, then I'll offer a few more thoughts. So Dr. Paul Lieber is a senior fellow at Joint Special Operations University at MacDill Air Force Base in Tampa, Florida. Had the chance to visit there last month, so great exchange there. That Joint Special Operations University is the education center for U.S. Special Operations Command. At JSOW, he provides research and subject matter expertise on information operations and strategic communication, respectively, with emphasis on methodological design of social problem sets related to persuasion. Prior to that role, he served as the personal command speechwriter for three U.S. SOCOM commanders, head of research for U.S. Central Command's web operations, and strategic communication advisor to Australia Special Operations Command. He's likewise served on the graduate faculty and University of Canberra, Australia, University of South Carolina, and Emerson College. Dr. Lieber holds a PhD and master's degree from Louisiana State University and a bachelor's from Syracuse University. So again, I'm very excited to have him here. I know that in my exchanges and my conversations with Dr. Lieber, it's opened my eyes to a lot of research opportunities that just previously I hadn't thought about. It's opened my eyes to career opportunities that I previously hadn't thought about. So that's why I'm so excited to have both our faculty here and a lot of our grad students here, just to, again, learn about some ideas, learn about some areas that may not have been previously on your radar in terms of topics you could study, avenues where you could publish and do some of that research. So anyway, I'm excited to have you guys here. I'm excited to have Dr. Lieber here. So with that all being said, turn the floor over to Dr. Lieber.
Thanks, Glenn. First things first, this is a little show and tell you guys can pass around. This is just a fact book, the current one on what U.S. Special Operations Command is. I don't kill anybody on the way here. Honestly, I had breakfast and I had dinner. It's all that happened. So thanks, Glenn. Also, too, I'm pretty informal. So if you want to stop me at any point in time with a question or something like that, please feel free at appropriate instances. I don't want to get derailed 100 times over and then go down rabbit holes of doom. Yeah, please sit down. I don't want anyone standing. Jeez. If there's anything that you need clarity on, I'd like you guys to then just ask. And of course, I'm not very long-winded, so that's not of course, but I'm not very long-winded, and there will be time afterwards for some questions and things like that of that nature, and anything goes associated with that. So as Glenn said, I'm very excited to be here specifically because I'm big into social science. I have similar backgrounds to all of you guys here. And my mission at Special Operations is literally, my literal mission is to provide social science expertise to difficult problem sets and things that can be sensitive. So, you know, a lot of things that you work on, as Glenn was indicating, there is direct relevancy to the things that I'm working on. It's just a matter of filling in the gaps and finding ways to translate that knowledge to the requirements of what the special operators and the community require. So a lot of the terms I'm using are probably not going to make sense. So I'm going to do my best to not use any acronyms, which I'm going to deserve an award for. Because if you've ever sat in on a briefing or a presentation by anyone in the military or associated with it, you take lots of acronyms, you probably copied them wrong, and then you spend an hour Googling them afterwards and saying, I wish I would have known what this was beforehand, and why didn't they just spell it out? So I'm going to do my best to not use acronyms, but I'm also going to, if I hope I don't insult anyone's intelligence, you probably did Google U.S. SOCOM or U.S. Special Operations Command before coming here, but I do want to explain to you guys a little bit more on what it is that we are and what we do. One of the things that is most commonly misunderstood, and we talked about this morning, people don't really get what special operations is and how the command operates and what are the types of missions and roles that they do. Believe it or not, nearly like 95% or more of the missions that they do are non-kinetic. They do not require force. So, dirty little secret, that's not very popular in movies, I'm sorry. The Bourne Identity isn't as exciting when he's meeting with tribal war chiefs and trying to broker deals to move non-government organization medical supplies across the border. That's not exciting. But that is a lot of the stuff that we do on our end. And we do a lot of research as well, intelligence collection, on-the-ground collection, those types of things. And as you'll find out in where what I'm going to present here, some of this will sound familiar to you because I do have the same background as you guys from mass communication. So the dirty little secret is we can help and we can do good things. So let's see if I don't break this. Fantastic. First things first, I always give a disclaimer. Much like if I asked all of you what you guys thought in terms of what is the most relevant way to describe social media impact within a particular setting or framework or whatever platform, I'm going to get whatever many people in this room different opinions. So I think my opinions here, I'm not saying anything that can't be quoted. It's being recorded. I'm okay with that. But I want to be crystal clear that I have 3 other colleagues that are resident senior fellows. We disagree on everything. So just please don't take anything I say as an official opinion of the command, Department of Defense, or the U.S. government. I'm not being dramatic. I'm just saying that because literally I'm giving you my opinion on things based on my experiences, which will differ. They've been unique, but they are a bit different. So if any of the questions are, well, what do you think about Department of Defense's policy on this? I'm just going to say I don't. That's not my job. So please, let's stay clear of politics and things like that. And I also just want to point out that, that again, we have a lot of very talented people at Joint Special Operations University, which I will refer to as JSOW going forward, United States Special Operations Command, which I will refer to as SOCOM going forward. So just note those 2 acronyms. I will use them a lot. But those are not, this is my opinion. This is not fact. If you want fact, guess what? I'm passing you around the fact book. Look at that. Look what I did there. All right. This is what we're going to be breaking this down. I do not have a lot of slides. That's intentional. I do not like slides, but the Department of Defense likes slides. I was a tenure track professor, as Glenn mentioned, in multiple places. I don't use PowerPoints. This kills me. So I'd rather just talk to all of you guys, walk around and facilitate discussion than do this. But this is what I'm trained to do. For those keeping score at home, why does it say unclassified up there? I was asked this once. It's not dramatic. Any bit of information, any content, printed or digital, that enters or leaves a classified environment in which something can be classified must be labeled. Okay, so if you're familiar with that, I'm not doing anything crazy. There's nothing in here that's exciting. If it said unclassified, FOUO, for official use only, then your eyebrows may perk up, which means that I'm probably going to discuss topics that shouldn't be beyond this room. But this is straight up unclassified. There's no secrets here. There's literally, or else I'd be probably shackled. But just note, I was asked that before once in a presentation. I didn't understand it, but then I realized that the world I live in has multiple switches and multiple settings that range across secret things, and I'm hard to reach at times. I'm wearing an Apple Watch, which I can never wear because I got it with me. This is the longest I've ever been able to wear it in consecutive days. I'm on day 2. It's very exciting. So, for those keeping score at home, it does not track ellipticals. It's very strange. Okay, so what is special operations? I'm not going to do a Q&A. I'm going to tell you exactly what it is. Okay, basically, in a nutshell, there are conventional forces. What are conventional forces? Army, Air Force, Marines, the deal with that. That is a traditional force, a big force under an umbrella of a certain service. Okay, what is special operations? They are called a joint force, which means they consist of representatives from across all of these different services. We do not own these people. Okay, they are serviced by our command. They provide specialized services based on their skill sets. They are selected by Special Operations Command to be special operators. A Navy SEAL is a Navy representative that happens to be a special operator because they pass the qualifications and the stuff that allows them to serve that. That is an odd thing. People don't understand it. So we're not operating in a place where there's a secret bunker somewhere where special operators emerge from out of eggs and they're hatched and they look really cool. I think they look pretty cool, but the point is that special operators are owned by the services. We borrow them, we give them back, we train them, they go back and forth. Pretty typical. We're interesting here in the United States. I mentioned I work for the Australian Special Operations Command. Australia is small. They have one branch that they draw from, and that's Army. So everybody in the Australian Special Operations Command is an Army representative, either an officer or a non-commissioned officer. So all those terms you can look up afterwards. I just want to explain what a special operator is. Now, what is special operations? That's anything beyond something that a conventional force would execute. Believe it or not, I mentioned most of the stuff that they do are not bang, bang, bang. Intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, also known as ISR, is one of the core activities in which special operations folks do most often. Why? Their goal is to shape spaces. Now, in today's world, I mention this to everyone in this room. You all are mass communication scholars, or scholars in waiting, or scholars for a while, or oral scholars. We'll just leave it at that. You understand how shaping communication spaces can impact the outcomes that are generated in the present and future, and also allow you to measure the effects of it. Special operators stay in places a very long time. We are everywhere. Literally, like in almost 100 places right now. But I don't hear about that on the news. You won't, because it's not a big conventional force. It's not a thing. They are literally sitting with people for weeks, months at a time. It can be up to 10 months at a time, getting to know the local populaces, getting to know the military, assisting them with a lot of operations, but also providing some counsel and guidance and training, all of the things that are needed to sustain relationships. They shape. So when things go bad, that's not the first time they show up. Special operations do not just helo in when something bad happens. They're normally there for a while, and they have knowledge of the environment. They're also usually trained in the foreign language in which they're there. So that they have to select a language of specialization. So the key things to note here, they're there a long time. Transregional threats are a big one. We always talk about, in our area, the commander, Tony Thomas, talks about China, North Korea, Iran. You've heard these before as threats in the news. But transregional is really the bigger issue. Non-nation states, individuals and groups that mean to do harm, not just to us, but across regions that don't recognize sovereignty. They really don't care. To them, there is no Syria. They don't care. We were joking about that last night, but they don't care. There is no Iraq. There's just northern and southern territories that have certain ethnic groups. They will very quickly and easily redraw that and not care if you agree with them. So they deal with transregional threats, and that's why having an enduring presence is very important. It means you have to be there a while to have some element of sustained effect. Does that make sense? Okay, good, because it's a lot to take in. I get it. All right. This is what the U.S. SOCOM mission is. It's in that book, but very specifically, U.S. Special Operations Command was created by Congress. It is the only military headquarters created by Congress after the failed rescue attempt in Iran with the hostage rescue. They decided we need to reinvigorate and establish a headquarters that allows for the training, education, and equipping of individuals to do these mission sets in the future. As you can tell, they needed them a lot since then. In fact, I would say that most of the stuff that you guys read about are special operations related. But the truth of the matter is, I'm going to say this again, this is my opinion, but probably at least 90%, oh, who am I kidding? 99% of the things that are going on you don't hear about. Okay, so there are good things happening. The world is, the United States Special Operations, in terms of the command I work at, I speak from experience, is trying to make the world a safer place. It's not all bang bang, as I said. Most of it isn't. It's working with our partner nations in particular. We do a lot with our partner nations. We have a group called the Five Eyes, FVEY. If you Google that, you'll see with the Brits, Australians, I mentioned this, the Canadians. We do a lot of stuff with partner nation forces in bad places to make them better ones. So we have things called Global Combatant Command. So every region has its own command. So U.S. CENTCOM, U.S. Central Command, is responsible for that region. U.S. Pacific Command is responsible for that region. U.S. SOUTHCOM for South America in that region. So we support those commanders. U.S. Special Operations Command does not dictate how we operate. The commanders in those regions do. Why? Again, we're a joint force. They own the space. They tell us how they want to use our guys. Again, maybe this is boring to you, but I want to be clear. We don't set the terms of engagement. We don't own the people. We don't indicate when we even go in. In fact, the State Department, the ambassador, the chief of mission says, yes, you can take out that target. That's how much oversight there is. Sorry, this kills the Bourne identity. I apologize, but I just want to be clear in terms of what we do. This is some of the stuff that we do. It's not comprehensive. Some of these may make sense to you. I'm not going to read them back to you or things like that. The ones to note, though, countering weapons of mass destruction is a new one. We just got that authority. We're worried about it domestically, of course, especially with chemical, biological, radioactive, and nuclear stuff. So we now have that authority under our belt to make sure, because of transregional threats, things coming in from other regions, we're worried about that. So we synchronize. We're an administrative headquarters and training, first and foremost. So that's kind of the stuff that we do. All of these authorities are granted to us under something by Congress known as Title 10, not to be confused with Title 9. Title 10 is the legislation that allows us to fund special operations activities quickly. Anything we do must fall under Title 10. If there's a big bad guy somewhere, it must fall under Title 10 in terms of the activities we're going to do, or we can't do it. Don't worry, this gets a lot more interesting. I wanted to give you guys a sense of what SOCOM is before I go into now how can I or you guys link up with it. Every commander has his, or we haven't had a her yet, but his priorities. These are the ones that current Commander Tony Thomas has. We must nest all of our research activities, all of our training and education, all of our efforts under the commander's priorities. So Glenn was privy to hearing one of his executive officers break down these in terms of what the current priorities were when he was down with us. But everything we do must support this. Every commander has different priorities, so needless to say, when they change seats, it can get pretty interesting. But it stays pretty consistent, and those are the things there. These are all publicly available stuff. So I'm not going to harp on this. You can find this on the forward-facing, meaning public, website for US SOCOM. We also have soft truths, hard to read. Don't worry about it. Again, forward-facing. Key here to note is there's not many of us. They can't be made overnight. A Navy person cannot become a Navy SEAL tomorrow because you have a requirement. So you have to take time to train, to understand what the future threats are going to be, and to adapt accordingly. And the big one here is most special operations require non-special operations forces assistance. I covered off on that already. We need people to help us do what we do. And it's not just, as I said, all tactical or kinetic activities. This is how we're made up. I mentioned the services. Each service has its own Special Operations Command. The biggest one is the Army out in Fort Bragg. I go out there fairly regularly. I help teach a class on influence in special operations. Guess what I teach? The mass communication part. So I explain to them how to use theory, strategies, and tactics, measurement criteria to get at what they're trying to do. So, I think you guys would enjoy that module. Maybe you wouldn't. Navy, Air Force, Marines all have specialty things that support their respective guys. Of course, Air Force, we're talking about the pilots and the craft. Navy, you know about the SEALs and the water stuff. Marines, they're the newest one, and they're awesome. They're a great force for very specialized stuff, and that's Joint Special Operations Command, or JSOC. They're the secret squirrels that do the mission sets, like the Bin Laden type of stuff that you've heard about. That's them. So they're their own beast, very specialized. They actually work a lot with guys with Title 50, which is the intelligence agencies. So all the stuff we do goes through civilian oversight. President of the United States, Commander-in-Chief, Congress pays for us. Title 10, everything we do has to go through those chains. So JSOC has a little more flexibility. I work a little bit with JSOC, but not too much. It depends. Usually it's measurement, operational effectiveness type of stuff. Where do I work? Who pays my bills? Right? Joint Special Operations University. We're also relatively new, about 15 years old. We've shifted a lot. We started out as pretty simple, just basic education stuff for enlisted folks that were just starting out, where they wanted to train them, get them more ready for problem sets in the future to assume leadership positions. Now we're huge. I mean, Glenn saw our facility. We've got graduate level education. We've got undergraduate level education. We have Senior Enlisted Academy, in which we bring in senior folks from all across the world and other militaries to train. And of course, we've got my area where we conduct original research. I did send Glenn a link to, you can get all of our publications. They're all available online through our press. So what I'll remind you, if you don't mind, later on, if you guys are interested, I'll send a link. I don't like carrying books with me. A, they're books, they're heavy. And B, you don't need books. You want stuff you can skim through and cite. So we have monographs that we produce every year, usually about 10. Each of the fellows supervises about 2 or 3. Again, you can guess which ones I choose. One's in mass communication or in social science. So I tend to focus on stuff related to, one of my big things is mental health, behavioral health. I'm a big champion of the social science related to that. So anything that deals with suicide prevention, reintegration, that's my baby. So if there's a researcher and it goes through the approval process, 2 from the past year were ones I supervised. So you'll see my name in them, but that doesn't mean much. It just means I help smarter people get their work out the door. We also have occasional papers, which are smaller form ones on very specific topic. I have one that I actually recently co-wrote with somebody as well, much smarter than me, that being my wife, on counter-radicalization, looking at violent extremist groups, how they organize, disorganize, how they focus around social network analysis nodes, and how you can predict in versus out group separation. Sounds like a mouthful, but not really. Think about how individuals form within social online communities, how they invest, divest, and what actions they plan to take and for what ends. Insert bad guys in there and you have your research, don't you? I mean, that's what I'm saying. There's a lot of linkages you can do. Again, all available online, and I welcome to talk about that if you guys want. More importantly, the last line there, everything we do must support USOCOM objectives. I do not do anything in the wilderness. As much as I'd love to sit in that room and play with that Oculus Rift all day, I can't unless it has a direct tie to USOCOM goals. How JSOW is organized, very quickly. I mentioned College of Special Operations. That's more the graduate level stuff. The Enlisted Academy. Continuing education is kind of cool. They take their show on the road. They do classes on demand called mobile education teams. They literally take them to any country in any corner of the world that requires a specialized course. I was talking to somebody who just got back from Iraq, and she's going to Kyrgyzstan and looking, they're all asking for countering violent extremism classes. I'm glad she does it, not me. A, she knows what she's talking about, and B, I really don't want that job. But we're also going to Eastern Europe in a couple months to help them with, with counterterrorism over on that neck of the woods to try to educate those folks there. Bottom left, that's me. There it is. Okay, please take a minute and read this. This is kind of the problem sets that we face every single day. And I'm going to walk by the screen, do the no and grab my water. So I got it. Thank you. Can you guys all read this okay? Yeah, good. All right. Kind of complicated, right? But at the same token, this is a day at the office. I mean, literally. So these are problem sets that we face every day. How do I know? I was just in Okinawa, Japan, talking to the 1st Special Forces group about the people who may have to potentially, this is fictional, the scenario, but the problem set is real, that they may have to do interventions. They are the people that would go in there. So, these are the things that we face on a daily basis. Now, I guarantee you, without knowing all of your research, but having a pretty good sense of what Texas Tech does and what the faculty does and seeing the labs this morning, that every single person in this room can contribute to solving this in some way, shape, or form, or providing some theoretical or applied aspect that would help elucidate some of the things that they are trying to get at. That's my point. Social science does have a role, but this is the types of questions that I face on a daily basis. So these are the things going a little bit deeper. Now we're out of the realm of the overview stuff. Now we're exciting. The river is clean. You can hear the birds singing, the frogs croaking. But did all that stuff make sense, the overview stuff? Everyone's still awake? I see a yawn. That's okay. It's all right. It's pre-lunch. I'm not offended. Okay, good. But I want to do that because I want to make sure that people get the sense of where the organization ends and social science begins and vice versa, and where they cross-pollinate. The big, deep, dark military engine does not drive my research. I want to be crystal clear. What does drive my research is helping the special operations community do their jobs better. So I just want to be clear that you understand what it is first before assumptions are made. Okay, so what is a threat, what isn't? As I said, these are the kinds of problem sets we deal with on a daily basis. I've had discussions with now 4 different individuals, and the common theme is, do we trust social media? Well, I don't know. It starts getting pretty complicated when you start talking about radicalized group recruitment, or you start talking about the nexus between drug trafficking, human trafficking, and antiquities, illegal antiquities trafficking, and more importantly, threats from sovereign states that are now trying to influence through online means how things and ideas flow. So narrative battles, do we counter messaging? Do we determine if someone is putting something out there that's bad, do we immediately go try to counter it? Are we adding credibility to it? How do we measure the effects of that? Behaviors can't be caused, but can they be statistically significantly predicted in a manner that you feel comfortable putting somebody's lives on the line with a recommendation, which is what we do. Okay? Last part is, you may have heard of the dark web. I know it sounds really scary and creepy. All it is just a VPN firewall. Individuals talk behind the scenes. Honestly, we use it, but we really don't. Because if you select to use like a closed group with your friends or something, even in Facebook, is that really indicative of the entire Facebook community? Not really. The dark web has relevancy, but it's not something that we tend to deal with too much. Where I work, I do look at data from it or assess it only because I want to know the entire space, but I would say that it's not something that I deal with too much. You may have heard the term human terrain. It sounds really scary. It's not like I asked this gentleman to lie down on the floor and I use him to go up to the next step. You're pretty big, though. I probably could, right? But that's not what it means. Human terrain really is on-the-ground collections of sociocultural data by usually individuals in uniform or social scientists. You may have heard this term in a negative connotation because a lot of social scientists, not a lot, I would say, geez, it was at least 6, if not a dozen. That is a lot, unfortunately. Got killed in Afghanistan and Iraq trying to gather this information. But this is very important information to get on the ground. Atmospherics is what they like to call them, fancy term for figuring out what space looks like. We've talked about persistent engagement. There is a weird divide. There's an actual area of specialization, operational research scientists, or ORSAs, as they're called. They are statisticians. Now, depending on the ORSA, in fact, I ended up in an hour-and-a-half conversation on Friday with an ORSA, or no, what's today? Wednesday, Monday. Wow, long week. With an ORSA. Thursday, thank you, even longer week. See, that's my point. I have no idea what's going on. I'm still going from meeting to meeting. But about the same exact thing, where the statistics begin and end, the measurement criteria, and social science. Depending on who you talk to, ORSAs are your best friend or your biggest enemy because you have to know, but more importantly, you have to know how they reason. This is an individual thing, and they can work with social scientists. It's just important to understand the different aspects of data collection and reasoning about problem sets that come into play. Anybody here do social network analysis? Oh, come on. You don't look at nodes and who talks to who, opinion leaders? Somebody? Anyone? There's no one in this room. You're lying. There's definitely at least 3 in this room. I don't mean the mathematical computations. I mean if you're looking at a cluster of who talks to whom. Yeah, I see nods. Thank you. Yeah, a little bit. You guys are doing it. You just don't know it. Let me explain to you what it is. No, because you don't realize it. It's basically looking at a network of individuals within a community, usually online, who talks to who, mapping that in the web, and saying, oh, the frequency of this and this. It's like word clouds of people. Not, you say, oh, yeah, I am doing that. I know, you're doing it. Okay, because you're looking at frequency, you're looking at relevancy, themes and frames, how often it happens, who are the ones that people trust, those types of things. Social network analysis is useful, but it doesn't necessarily explain the whole picture. So I'm mentioning this to you because where I have worked in my spaces, I'm a big quantitative guy. I am a methodological person. If for you graduate students, show of hands. Okay, I'm gonna give you a little bit of, you think your lives are bad. When I was in graduate school, my area of emphasis, by the way, is statistics and methods. Okay, I took 8 different classes in 8 different disciplines on stats and methods. Why? I'm a sadist. No, but I wanted to know how different areas of inquiry reason about measurement. What is the paradigm that they use to solve a problem set? How does the biostatistician, I'm so nice, I took it twice, 1 and 2, how they reason about it and how about problem sets when they face it? Well, it's important because social network analysis is something that a lot of folks that try to figure out threats use, that try to see, especially in social media spaces, who's communicating with you, how much, is this something we should keep in mind? The problem is if you don't put social science in there, what are you left with? Ooh, not sure. That's the great divide between what they call measures of performance, things that have to happen for a phenomenon to occur, and measures of effectiveness for, is this actually accomplishing what you want? In this instance, it would be measures of performance are all these seats full. You know, Glenn feels good, right? You go shut up. You guys feel like you've done your part. Or measures of effectiveness, is this advancing the interests of the program by bringing in qualified speakers and providing you something of relevancy? Measure of effectiveness would, of course, require an additional measure of assessment, asking those very questions. When you're looking at social network analysis by itself, it becomes dangerous. Literally, you can kill people if you make bad decisions. So I throw that out there. I'm just throwing you the different methods that they use to reason about social science where I work. I've talked about MOP, or performance versus effectiveness. They do not use theory very often where I work. an interesting paper I think you guys would like that I wrote in this room. I co-authored it with another PhD, a guy from Penn State who is in psychological operations. And what we did was I wanted his approach on how he does his job. What is the doctrine? It's not Harry Potter-esque. Doctrine is literally just what they're supposed to do, the directions for that specific specialization, the requirements, versus what is a social science approach to solving these problems. We co-authored a paper on how to defeat ISIS using a combination, or where doctrine fits with social science. Just Google my name and ISIS, you'll find it. I know that sounds really horrible and nefarious, but it's in Special Operations Journal. You'll find it. But more importantly, it's a good way for you guys to see where these things intersect. And finally, I started out with saying, this is my opinion. Oh my God, did I give the lecture from hell about a week ago. Maybe I'll get the day right. I'm not even going to bother trying. I've been flying like I'm insane right now. It's busy. It's never this busy. But I'm really not that important. But the thing is, I was explaining to a statistician from the Air Force, from Air Force Institute of Technology, Lieutenant Colonel. He's a stats professor. Very exciting people. But the point was, I state, my opinion is, you cannot cause anyone to do anything. Okay. You can have a statistically significant association with something that may correlate to attitude opinion change that may lead to behaviors, or for our qualitative people, you may have enough data based on the sampling methodology that you use, the richness of the data, the cross-combining all the elements that are there, online versus offline, whatever sampling you use to feel extreme confidence based on the research to back you up, whatever method of analysis you want to use, a meta-analysis to conclude it, to make that. But you can never cause anyone to do anything. Now, the problem is, in the military, they want to know how to stop getting bad guys from point A to point B, and how you use social media to do it. So I've got into literally no, I don't yell, but pretty bad arguments with people that are way more important than me. Sir, man, we can't make that conclusion. I cannot cause anyone to do anything. I can, with statistical confidence or with qualitative confidence in terms of the sum of the parts, make that conclusion. But this is something that I fight with on a daily basis. The stats professor called me a blasphemer, and I said, thank you for your introspection. And we moved on. But that was it was a very difficult conversation, because those are the kinds of things that they are trying to get at, is how you get to behavioral change. Because at the end of the day, a safer space is not created by better social media, is it? It's created by an environment that is shaped. All right, this is something you hear too a lot, is cyber. Where does cyber fit? What is it? What is cyber? No one knows. None of you can answer this question. It depends on what you do. Is it offensive cyber? Do you take down things? Is it defensive cyber? Do you protect infrastructures? Is it yes, no, maybe? Is it the web? Who knows? The point is, they're looking at cyber. We're not sure where it fits. Primarily offensive cyber right now, how to take down structures or protect against denial of service attacks. The big one, believe it or not, maybe is energy grids. That keeps many people up at night. That's the one that people are worried about, especially here, first and foremost. And that's where a lot of the discussions in DC actually are taking place. I'm sure your son is probably knee deep in that one. Okay, so now the other question you're going to have is, how does somebody in mass communication end up in front of you? And what is the method to the madness and where all this came from? Okay, this is very simply. This is a little bit of background in terms of how I see the world and how I came to this place. I worked as a dot-commer in California, investor relations, public relations for technology companies. I manipulated stock markets legally. So if I wanted people in Malaysia to buy, people in Singapore to sell, analysts that speculate, despeculate, I knew what I did worked. I wanted to prove it. So I was interested in messaging and persuasion. So that's why I decided to take up lots of student loans. So the point is that you can use your skills, your powers for good, and figure out ways and how they apply to those kinds of things. I talked about the second part. This is a big one. Show of hands, qualitative. Yeah, it's normally about 50-50. You guys can be friends with quantitative. Okay, every qualitative construct can be quantified. Every single one. I am yet to find a single one I could not turn into a quantitative construct, or at minimum overlay it with something I had done to provide value. If you go on a job interview and someone tells you, for our graduate students, faculty don't leave please, they'll be very upset. But if you go on a job interview and they tell you that we're quant heavy here, we're qualitative heavy, and just say, so am I. Are you? Yes. Are you qualitative or quantitative? Yes. Because the truth of the matter is, if you're good at what you do, every single construct can be measured. It's about rigor. It's about understanding the theory and understanding the approach that you do. Every data point is a data point. And don't assume that since you have a bent in a theory, everything can be measured. I spend almost every waking minute of my day trying to figure out ways of measuring things that people claim can't be. Because every bit of thing that I measure is another step to making something safer, right? And getting more situational awareness. So don't fall into that trap. Okay, I'm going to critique this. You guys, last night they heard me say this. Please, if you do one thing, okay, at the end of the day today, have a moment of just reflection. You can put on some Zen music. You can have whatever beverage of your choice. Ask yourself, are you looking at something beyond theory in your research? I say that because that is a very big problem with our field. And we are becoming a little bit obsolete with too much inward looking and not either cross-discipline or looking to the applied approach. That may work when you're writing your dissertation. That may even help you survive a job talk. That may make you very good on certain journal boards as a faculty member, things like that. But if you're not being applied, you're not answering questions. Like the first thing someone said to me once, I'll never forget this. I was so just, but this is me flustered. I don't get flustered. Honestly, it's like, it's never personal. No one ever really is that offended by you that if you don't know them, that it's personal. Okay, there's another factoid, by the way. People have too much going on in their heads and their phones to care about you specifically, except if you give them a reason to consistently care about you, okay? There's a good fortune cookie for you. But my first presentation I gave was in New Orleans at the ICA conference. And I was a fledgling graduate student from Louisiana State. And I was in New Orleans, so I didn't have to go far, hometown, you know, I'm cool. And someone from Wisconsin-Madison in the back of the room after the presentation looks up at me and goes, well, so what? And I'm like, oh my God, so what? Did you see my methodological design and my advancement of theory and this sample? Like, did you see this? Well, so what? Please always answer the so what. You should start your research question how you pose it with so what. Skip the hypothesis, start with the question, ask the so what. That's just one bit of advice that I've learned by going into a completely applied setting. Please don't render our field obsolete. There are so few of us left that are doing applied work, and all of you can be applied. And even if you are being academics, be applied. It makes you more relevant to the community. It makes you more relevant to others. That's my official opinion. It's not of Texas Tech. I just want to throw that out there. Another thing, too, don't be too infatuated with a platform. You know, the things that you're using are by themselves, that I have found, are conduits for, you know, McLuhan, you've heard, medium is message, fine. But more importantly, understand that the interface that you're using, a lot of people will tell you that Twitter made them do something. Well, great. But something else is going to make them do something tomorrow or the next week. So just try to explain to people conduits. That's something that's been important to me. The research that I've done, okay, if you've seen my CV or if you've looked me up, I'm sure some of you have. If you haven't, that's okay. I'm not offended. It's cool. But this is, I talked about the first one. I've talked about the second one in social network analysis. This is a pretty cool one. One of your colleagues was talking to me about use of water conservation and things like that. I'm very interested in the Australia, that region. I worked out there. I lived out there. But humanitarian assistance and disaster recovery. See, I spelled it out. I promised you I would every acronym. But the thing is, the things I learned in looking how individuals communicate about risk and things that are problematic. We talk about a lot of stuff. Of course, we're worried about terrorism. We're worried about other things. You know, I saw the sample polls on what keeps people up at night. You know, and interesting things. How does mass comm theory fit into saving the world? That very formalized countries like informal communication. Kind of makes sense if you think about it. And the reverse for ones that are like old school. You get so much garbage on a daily basis transmitted to you. If something's real, I get like, dude, you need to change your entire research, what you're doing. No, seriously, you need to change it. He's going like, do I really need to change this? Like, he singled me out, like, what the hell? Informal communication. Getting an email blast from Dr. Cummins or one of your colleagues, you know, Dr. Wilkinson saying, hey, guys, it's important to note the relevancy of your research. You're like, okay, that's great, me and 50 of my closest friends. Informal spaces are important for transmitting important information. Kind of strange. Other thing too, obvious, men and women receive information differently. Little known fact, when volcanoes erupt in Vanuatu, which is the most volcanic-ridden country in the world, do you know how they communicate? In community theater done by women, I kid you not. That is how they communicate all of their crises. And then when the guy from Australia said, we can help you with these problems, like, do you want our resources? I facilitated a working group. Sorry, I left out, see, I told you to leave out one step. I told Glenn I always leave out steps 1 and 3. I give people steps 2 and 4. So I was facilitating this discussion for all the countries in the region. I do that now, this twice, third year this year. And they're figuring out how to solve these problems with, with rising waters and all the environmental disasters out there. And they're like, oh, Australia could send help. And the guy from Vanuatu, which is like one of the poorest places in the world, looks at him, it's like, we're good. We've been doing this for 1,000 years, 2,000 years. Like, we're fine. Like, if you want to send stuff afterwards, that's cool. But we'll use our community theater. We'll set it up. You're like, are you honestly using female community theater to tell people how to evacuate? Yeah, damn straight they are. And they've been doing it for like 3,000 years. They still exist. The guy sitting across from me as a representative of their police force, trust me, they're fine. They're good. They're good, Australia. Do you want to send humanitarian assistance? It's important to note that. I learned a lot from looking at this. Another thing, too, this is kind of a cool one. I like this one. So when things go wrong, how do you feel about it? Do you be like, well, someone else should have taken care of it, the government's failing me, or I got to solve this problem myself? So when people face risk, that's going to affect how they process messages. So these are the kinds of things where mass communication theory comes in. We've talked about technology. I've done some research on how people reason about problem sets ties into their education. So if they haven't gotten proper social science education, they don't really know it. Theory, there's lots of it in special operations. Military theory is a genre. I don't particularly delve into it. I don't know it. But there are people that are very smart that do. I co-edited a volume on it, but I don't really do research on it. I try not to. It's not something I know. I talked about the second part already. This is interesting. You've heard about what we're doing overseas a bit with foreign countries, governments that are incomplete, like they're about to collapse. Name every country in the particular sector of the Middle East, and they're probably on some sense of like, we don't know how long they're going to be. So training and equip, work with partner nations, either rebel forces, upcoming forces. That's something that's important. I did a classified study on Syria. I was the project lead on that one. Online versus offline transference of safety. So the biggest a-hole online is kind of nice. Offline, how does that translate beyond that? Moral disengagement, when will someone state that they will partake in activities that are potentially harmful to society? What is that great divide when someone will consider making decisions that do not benefit themselves or benefit themselves in lieu of others? Web content, as it says there, and we've talked about the last one. Some of the stuff I'm working on right now, I've talked about this with your colleagues. Do emojis elicit responses greater than text? I'm working on that one right now, independent of text. How to use machine learning to figure out sentiment. Okay, also how to use machine learning, how to predict threats. So doing like some set of assessment of text and figuring out, is something bad? Because of there, I've talked about that part, the third one there. We've talked about the fourth one. The other thing too, I've mentioned the so what question. I do a lot of hands-on stuff. At least half of my job is providing subject matter expertise to people, and literally saying what keeps you up at night, and figuring out ways to solve the problem, and to work with people like you. Now, I'll talk about this later tonight and tomorrow. So can I help? Does any of this actually apply to me, or what's the thing? Okay. We're working on collaborating. We need some help with university partners to prove concepts work before we can apply them in the field. Using people like you guys, your faculty, to advise us, and vice versa. In terms of the problem sets you're working on. Be horse whisperers back and forth to figure out ways that the stuff you're doing on is related to the stuff that we're working on. Of course, your faculty are your point of contact. And the last point I've mentioned to death. Please do not be in the clouds. The more applied you can be, the better it is, the chances that we could probably use it and, and also empower you to help the community. So I hope that's useful. I'm sure this is probably a foreign language to almost everyone in this room, but at least you left this conversation knowing there are people like you using these in an alternate type of environment, and these are the kinds of things that we're working on. I didn't kill anybody on the way here. That's not what we do. I hope you left with that comment. Mass comm theory can be used in an applied setting. Toward those perspectives, measurement is the #1 question right now in the messaging space. How do you measure effectiveness beyond straight market research? Those are the things that people are asking the most questions about. There are people literally whose lives are on the line and that require mass communication expertise. They need subject matter experts outside the community to work with them. They're just not very good yet at learning how to work with them. So, any questions? I'm not commenting on politics. Thank you. Sir.
So I know you expressed your opinions on some of the findings. So to what extent that the special operations actually incorporate some of your research findings in what they do?
When you're in a position literally that requires them to do it, you've got the greatest chance. So the information operations, which is the area that are designed to do web campaigns and that are designed to do some of the social media interventions and things, they have incorporated it because they don't have a choice. Because if I'm directly affiliated with that, they'll use it. I'll advise on theories, methodological design, those type of things. But I can never force anyone to truly do it, because the way it works is anything with mass communication in particular, they're normally operated with they're paying a survey company or someone else to go out and do it. I can help shape it. So I have helped shape it with my research. I've been told that the stuff on the in versus out group stuff has been very helpful for planning activities. People have used it. We ran out of them. I'm shocked that people actually read it. It was, but we literally ran out of them. They have to reprint more. So I know people are reading some of that. It's more so my ability, or where I sit. Let me answer your question directly. I can't force anybody to use my stuff. I can't prove that anybody used it, but I know that they're reading it and it is shaping how they make decisions, because I've been told that. So people that are in the positions that either to use social science or mass communication have told me they've read my work. In the class that I teach on influence, they have to select readings. This is now the second time in a row they've selected one of my research without even knowing I'm even going to be on the agenda. So there is some influence in it. Am I creating widespread change? I don't think so, at least not yet. I'm hoping that that there's, but I work with, more importantly, people outside of special operations. I've got ties to intelligence agencies, the State Department, to all these other people that are working similar problem sets. So to the people I talk to, I provide them with the research, and that's how we work back and forth around. Does that answer it a bit? Yeah, it's not direct. It's more of, well, what research really can, but they are reading it. I do know that, which shocks me.
So do you have a similar, like a tenure system in your place?
Our place is kind of weird because we just started really embracing research and hiring PhD faculty like 5 years ago. So we don't, we're not even accredited, really. So it's more of an advanced level training, an education center. So we're contracted. All the PhDs are contracted because they can't find PhDs that either have the security clearance or can hold it, or that understand that community. So I guess I'm technically tenured as long as they don't fire me. But, maybe after today, when this goes on the web, they'll fire me. So, I don't know. Do you have a lawn that needs cleaning, sir?
So for the graduate students in the audience, how do you, meet theory with application? So what would be your advice to take what they're interested in? Obviously, it's got to be conceptualized
Sure.
for their projects, but then how would you make sure it had some applied?
That is such a great question, and I had to learn that the hard way. I almost never do research by myself. I almost, except one instance, every research project I've ever done has been collaborative, and it's been collaborative with someone in another field. And the reason is because working with someone in another field allows you to both identify a problem set and then create a theoretical bridge between the two areas that forces you to be applied. Because then you're not on an island working with your own peers and in the echo chamber of trying to see, okay, does this theory fit? Is my sampling good? More so, how do I apply social psychology theory to mass communication theory to solve a specific problem set? And then you've created something different. I would say my advice is if you have a buddy somewhere, or make a buddy at a conference or on campus or with another faculty member, another bit of advice, if you're too far along, that's fine. It's okay. If you have your committees and all that stuff, it's always good to have another committee member from outside your department as a good sanity check. So it keeps you applied. It keeps you honest. I had one person from my department on mine. It really helped keep me honest because it allowed me to know that whether or not what I was saying had that relevancy. That's what I've seen. That's my view on the world. But, you know, I cheat. I find someone else that has something that's really interesting, and we co-author it together. What else we got? Sir?
So that problem set that you showed about Korean stuff was very clearly, mass comm focused, social media focused, but you also said you have a big passion for like mental health outcomes and self-harm. Do you find problem sets that intersect with mass comm theory and those sorts of mental health problems a lot, or are those sort of distinct research areas?
God, what a great question. You know, the problem with the way that they conceptualize, it's so funny because, I've had this discussion so many times, and you've just captured it so much better than all the other people who have asked me this question have. The program that is designed to treat mental health is called Preservation of the Force in Families, or POTIF, see, no acronym. And what they do is they group all the recovery stuff under the same umbrella. So physical recovery, mental health recovery, reintegration, all those things, that spiritual, it's all grouped under the same. So the problem is when they're trying to solve the mental health issue, their methodology is based on comprehensive stuff that doesn't necessarily fit social science. So I've seen their instrumentation, I've seen their stuff, and it's not very good. In fact, one of the authors that I worked with looked at reintegration, meaning when individuals come back and they reintegrate with their families, on suicide prevention. And it was kind of cool. What she did was she went around, I showed you all those components, those services and stuff. She went around to each of the components and wanted to look at their unofficial assessment criteria and how they reintegrate. Not the stuff on the record from Preservation of the Force in Families. What are the questions they ask and where the social science applies. One place was doing it right. And it's been published, so it's not Naval Special Warfare Command or where the SEALs come from, because they used social science and they had rigor in their approach to do it. Unfortunately, their paradigms are set where they see it as this problem set that is part of a bigger picture because it's such a big problem, because they're all coming back either with PTSD or injuries because of all the deployments. I really wish, I offer it all the time. When someone calls me up or I meet them, especially in that space, the first words out of my mouth, because we're a huge organization, but more importantly, geographically separated, how can I help? Can I see your instrument? Can I help you shape it? Almost every instance I hear nothing, but every now and then I hear something. And that's the thing. So the way to help them is really to try to force that in there, but the way they perceive the problem is from this big picture because it's so big. But there are places like Naval Special Warfare Command doing it, and take a look at that monograph. It's by, she's from Chapel Hill, Jen Hazen, and look at the methodology section. I think you'll get a kick out of it. She describes how they do it and what are the questions they ask. It's maybe a couple pages that really describe and answer your question directly, because she asked that same question. And she's a subject matter expert on it. I'm not. I'm not a subject matter expert on mental and behavioral health. I am on social science, methodological design, but it was pretty cool how she asked it. That's such a good question. Thank you. Sir?
So you mentioned the Special Forces Journal. I know in your videos, I think it's one of the top things, the Journal of Special Forces.
Special Operations Journal.
Special Operations.
Yep.
So I'm assuming that's going to be very, so applied practical application of some, research that could be done, broadly. Is that journal under control of, is there a faculty journal? Is it? So what I'm getting at is, could someone like me,
100%.
Judson,
Yeah.
write up an article about how you might do some of the work that we're doing and apply it to?
That's exactly what they want. In fact, we just hired, as of last week, full-time, that works with us, the editor of that journal. And the stuff that they're looking for is exactly that. Try to find new approaches or to looking at special operations problem sets. Now, yes, someone will talk about, modern methods of unconventional warfare in denied areas using literal activities. Okay, got it. But that's not every article in the journal. So yes, you definitely can, as long as it's, it is peer reviewed. I think it's Taylor and Francis, so it's legit. And if it's something, I can help mentor you guys if you want, and take a look and help shape it and make sure the lingo's there, and and you're missing something on this. It can't be zero applicability to it. You're gonna have to, you're gonna have to find a way to do that. If I got to work with you and coach you on, okay, here's some documents on this, you need this, I could do that, but you definitely can get into it as long as it's high quality.
What's the name of it again?
Special Operations Journal.
And are you to the point where, say you're doing experiments, like you gotta have 2 or you gotta have 3, or would you look at?
No, they don't do that.
Okay.
No, because it's peer reviewed, and it's peer reviewed by SMEs, subject matter experts. It's not the kind of field. We look for best practice, and if you're that much of a horse's rear, or if you're dealing with something that is literally bleeding edge, no pun intended, on something that's very salient, and you're looking for new ways and methods, and you're going to sit there and critique someone's, blind pilot test validation, you're just an idiot. Because who wants, it's so hard to even get access to that space or to make that leap. No, I peer reviewed for stuff too, and if someone comes back with that, I'm just like, you're a moron, forget that comment. Or you put the usual one-sentence liner in there that says, the nature of this inquiry, limited availability to, verification to a single data point. Of course, future inquiries, well, whatever. Idiots. Whoever says that no, we're good. Sorry, long answer. Go crazy. As you can see, I've done this many times. What else we got, sir?
Do you guys work with large social media companies like YouTube or Facebook and working with how to predict threats and find things like that?
We talk to them, especially their senior level executives. We do have pretty candid conversations with them in terms of best practices, but do we work directly with them to do campaigns? We do not. Now, one of the reasons we can't do it is all stuff that we do, we can do it, but let me backtrack. Again, I'm answering step 2 and 4. Everything from the Department of Defense, you have to disclose it has to be fully disclosed that it's coming from us. So it's like the stuff that we want to do, we don't really do campaigns. Well, we do in the past. You can look that up and you can see we've gotten our hands caught in the cookie jar. But we're not supposed to. But the thing is, we do talk to them, but our social media that is known is pretty unsophisticated. I wish we'd do less in it and just hand it off to the combatant commands or to the intelligence agencies that have more leeway to do it. But we do talk to them all the time. In fact, the commander was just out in the Silicon Valley meeting with Alphabet and who else? Well, he's at Stanford as well. He did all the rounds. We were this close to getting Elon Musk in for a talk. Thomas Friedman's here today. But we were going to get Elon Musk in next month, but he couldn't do it at the last minute. He was like, can't do it. So we do get people in, and we do talk to them. But yeah, it's rough because we don't really do campaigns. And we can't do it on anything in the U.S. We're not legally allowed to. We can't do any form of influence campaign to American citizens.
We're up against the noon hour. I hate to cut things off, but the good news is that Dr. Lieber is here with us the rest of today and then tomorrow morning. So I want to go over a few more opportunities to interact. Again, have more of this type of Q&A and just conversation about opportunities. This afternoon at 2:30 in room 156, so literally right above us, we'll just have more of an open-ended discussion about career opportunities, roles for social scientists within various DoD type of organizations. Then this afternoon, Dr. Busey's class at 4 o'clock in the think tank. Dr. Lieber's going to give another a little bit more formal lecture, somewhat like this. But again, a guest lecture today at 4 if you'd like to join Dr. Busey's class for that. And then tomorrow morning, the last stop on Dr. Lieber's agenda is we're going to have just kind of an open-ended discussion about what are some specific synergies that we could develop between our faculty, between our students, and JSAL to figure out, again, how can we move this forward? Because I think there's a very strong interest on both sides to figure out what these opportunities are. So that's tomorrow morning at 9:30. We'll just have that in the focus group room next door. So like I said, if you have questions about any of these or want me to get this back to you, I'll probably send yet another mass email, so get ready for that. I appreciate you guys joining me here. If you would, join me one more time and thank you, Dr. Lieber.
Thanks, guys.